What's going on YouTube? Jamil here, and I gathered three new friends and myself, and we had a discussion that was really important. We're talking about medicating children, and it's a pretty deep conversation, and we dive into things. We share a lot of vulnerabilities and experiences that we've all been through. But I think at the end of this conversation, you will leave with some questions. Maybe you are experiencing something happening in your family right now. Maybe you have a child who is different and you've been grappling with medicating them and you really just don't know which way to turn. I hope after listening to our experiences that you gain some more insight and you have some more options. So with that, here we go.
All right, everyone. Okay, my name is Brooke Siem, and I'm the author of the award-winning memoir, May Cause Side Effects. I'm here today with a wonderfully diverse group of people. We all met through a single mutual friend. We all stumbled on a conversation because we have all been medicated as kids. Well, at least the three of us have. And Jessenia here has a very interesting story, lives in Virginia Beach, has 6 kids of her own, and is running into this in your day-to-day life. But we thought we would come together here and discuss what happened to all of us and can maybe just try and find some avenues for a little bit of hope or solutions, different strategies. Because what's great about this is that even though the three of us spent a good portion of our life on powerful psychiatric drugs, we've also come out on the other side. We are all, I think, objectively successful, even if though we're a little confused in what's going on with our lives. But this is an important conversation, and I'm so glad to have all three of you here. So we'll start with you guys. Let's start with your stories. Jamil, let's start with you.
Fun. All right, so I am Jamil Damji. I'm a real estate professional as a career. And ADHD is what got me into, the world of being medicated as a young person. And so, it was an interesting situation for me because I come from an East Indian background. And so academics was huge in my family. And not just doing well in academics, but like better than everybody, right? You need to have straight A's. You got to be the top of the class. The only chance that you're going to have to get into medical school with a full scholarship is if you are like rocking at school. And so, even though objectively, I think I could have done well without the meds, I just had a hard time focusing, right? Sitting in the seat was difficult for me. I've always been hyper. I've always kind of moved around. Every day I've got to do hours of physical activity in the morning just to I'm like a husky in a condominium, right? Like I got to get out there and do stuff so that I can just like function at a normal level throughout the day without feeling like I'm going to jump out of my skin. And that was how I felt growing up. And because of that, when I would sit down and try to study, I was like all over the walls. So what happens is you go see a guidance counselor in your school.
How old are you?
This would be in high school. So like 15, 16. And I see a guidance counselor and I explain my situation. And immediately the guidance counselor gives me a referral to a psychologist, who then gives me a referral to a psychiatrist, who then has me taking a test, who then within a matter of 2 weeks, I had one of the most powerful amphetamines in my hands. And not just a little bit of it, like a lot of it. It was called Dexedrine. And
what year was this, roughly?
Well, I graduated high school in 96, so this would have been probably 93, 94. 94. Sorry, 94, 95. 94, 95. I graduated in 96. So 94, 95 is when I first was, and on top of that, in my first year of high school, in the 10th grade, I was expelled. Like my first week of my 10th grade, I was expelled for getting into a fight. I was really just like all over the place behaviorally.
Was that before medication?
Before medication.
Okay, yeah.
So like they compound all this, right? Like he's aggressive, he's getting into fights, he can't sit in his seat. He seems to be intelligent, but yet can't focus. All the trappings.
He's the problem.
He's the problem.
He's a class clown. He's
100%. 100%. So then I have Dexedrine in my hands, and my oh my, was it ever very powerful medication, right? and it did the trick. It sat me down, right? And you almost think it's counterintuitive that would be the case, that you would give somebody an amphetamine that would calm them down, but it did calm me down. But it also kept me awake, and it also like completely dissolved my appetite. And within a matter of a year and a half of abusing it, because I would call it abuse, right? Like the amount that I would take, even though it was prescribed, was, I feel, abusive. And I was becoming psychotic. Like I was seeing things. I couldn't sleep. I'd be awake for a week at a time. And I mean, that carried on into college, and couple that with the fact that I have this cultural pressure to excel in school. I've got this now misperception of myself as broken and needing medication in order to be fixed. I'm looking at an external source of relief in order to fix what's wrong with me.
We need to come back to that for sure, because that's a big theme of my experience as well.
Yeah. So that was my situation.
Where were your parents?
They were here. I mean,
where were they in this situation?
They were,
presumably they had to sign off on this if you were a minor.
Yeah. But from their perspective, and I have no, I mean, culturally, again, my parents are first generation immigrants. They don't get it. They had so much trust in the medical system. Like they believe when a doctor says something, because they wanted me to be a doctor, right? Like the prestige that's put on to a medical doctor in the Indian culture is like, you're God. And so when the doctor says, this is what's going on, they're like, the doctor is right. And so I think that they just believed, they bought the story.
I feel like a lot of parents in that type of situation are like, my kid is going to fail and get kicked out and not succeed, and it's my fault that I have to do this, or they can't get through this grade, or they'll get expelled. There's a lot of pressure. So I think it's the not having a solution that pulls a lot of people into that same kind of fear.
Yeah, and it was like, my mom would be like, will you have enough? Do we need to make sure that you gotta, do I gotta call the doctor? And I was like eating more than I was supposed to take. Taking more than I should have been. And the doctor was just filling the prescription, right? Yeah. So then she would call and say, oh, he's taken too many. He needs more. And so as long as she's signing off on it, he's like, there you go. And so it was this like...
That's really scary.
It is.
That's really scary. Like he didn't see you, he didn't check on you, he didn't ask why you were taking too much, he didn't see it. That's so scary.
No.
Yeah. And this was the early 90s. I mean, the same thing happened to me throughout. So I was medicated in 2001. My father suddenly passed away. Same thing. Child psychologist immediately said, she needs a psychiatrist. And then the psychiatrist, within a matter of minutes, started me on antidepressants. We tried multiple until I ended up on a combination of Effexor XR and Wellbutrin XL. By that point, I was about 16 years old. Within 2 years, I'm 18. I'm in charge of my own medical decisions. I also, at that point, think I'm completely broken. Like, I've been told by all the adults around me, through actions, through words, and through medical prescriptions, that there's something wrong with me.
But on top of that, you have all of these negative symptoms from your medications that also make you feel broken, and you're just personalizing all of it. And that's the scariest place for a lot of people, I think.
Especially for young people.
Right. You were just grieving, and now you have actual medical symptoms.
Correct.
Because these medications, they're just... The symptoms are always far worse than what they're trying to help you with.
Yeah. I ended up on 4 different medications after the initial 2 psychiatric drugs to combat the side effects from the psychiatric drugs.
Which also have side effects.
That nobody put 2 and 2 together until I was 30, that this was the problem. But when I was in New York, so I moved to New York after college, at that point I'd been on 6 different drugs for 6 years. And again, nobody questioned it. My GP ended up prescribing me all my drugs. And
Your general practitioner?
My general practitioner,
Wow.
Which is something like 85-90% of of antidepressants are prescribed by GPs. More like antipsychotics, those sorts of things do tend to go through more of psychiatrists. But I mean, now everybody's just getting their Adderall from Teledocs, which is disgusting. But
so zero accountability.
No, 15-minute appointment by a nurse practitioner in some other state. You never
know nothing about you.
No.
You can even actually do the call without leaving your camera on.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
And it's so easy, 15 minutes. But my GP, about 5 years in, I called because I needed more pills. I needed a prescription refill because I was out of them. And I hear him shuffling some papers in the background. And he just looks at my chart and I hear him say, I just realized we never did a physical. We should probably do that. I had been seeing the man for 5 years and he had been prescribing me drugs for 5 years.
Yeah.
So anyway, Zach.
Yeah.
What is your story? Let's come back to you.
Yeah. So, that was cool to get to know that about you. I would say my story is similar, but a little bit different. Kind of my experience with it was one that I feel like happens quite a bit, but also it got pretty extreme, and I think that it all started with Adderall being kind of the domino effect to everything else. So basically 8th grade, what are you, 13, 14, 8th grade? I remember being in science class and didn't care what was going on in there. And, you know, they were talking about atoms and all this stuff. And I remember this incident specifically because this incident was what ended up having him, you know, contact the principal, contact, you know, my mom, and then start the whole process. But I got up to, you know, go talk to this girl that I liked. I had a crush on this girl. You know, he's up there talking about atoms, and I had no interest in what he was saying. So I'm like, I can't listen to this anymore. So I went to an open desk to talk to this girl that I liked. And, you know, he stopped me after class and he's like, it doesn't seem like the past few days you can just, you know, settle down. I think we need to do a meeting with the principal, or he wrote a ticket. I can't remember. It was a long time ago. Something like that.
What year was it, roughly?
Oh, man. So I was 9th grade, so that would have been 2004 maybe? Okay. 04, because I graduated in 08. So, yeah, so basically had the appointment, same thing, kind of like you guys. I got right to a psychiatrist. I think that's what it was at that time. You know, took a test, and basically I bet you 90% of people that take the test, you know, they probably all say that, you know, the results turn out to be the same. But yeah, I mean, obviously that's kind of, I feel like when Big Pharma was on the come up, right? They're like, ooh, we catch these kids at you know, 13,
clients for life,
14,
right? Because you're going to keep rolling the prescriptions to deal with all the other symptoms.
Yep.
It's wild. Get you hooked fast.
Exactly. So basically, you know, they found me ADHD, and really for me, it wasn't that I couldn't. It was a little bit different. It wasn't that I couldn't sit still. I feel like I explain it like my mind couldn't sit still. It's just, it would be all over the place. But then when I tried to focus on something, I'd get tired. Like my brain would start to get tired. And so I'd start to do something else. Right. So, so that's kind of what I remember before. And then after I got put on Adderall, it was just like a switch flipped, and I, you know, started taking them. I wasn't really abusing them, but I started selling them. And because when you're in 8th grade, you know, like, you know, and kids are like, you know, you're in that age where you're just adventurous to everything, right? I remember rolling up paper and smoking paper. What?
There's a lot of pressure. You know, everybody's like bullying everybody. Nobody fits in anyway, you know, and then now you're a weird kid who's on something and labeled, and you make friends by selling.
Was it weird in 2004 though? Because I think I was medicated in 2001 for antidepressants. That was weird. 1993 was probably pretty different. Like you were maybe the only one. Like I didn't talk about it, but
I didn't really talk about it much. But funny enough that you say that you were selling them because I was buying some from because I was taking way too many of them, right? And so like I remember there was a dude, big tall kid, and so like and he was huge, and so like he was being prescribed a lot of them because of his size, and he was like, I don't need all these, and so like every month he'd give me like a quarter of his prescription, and then I was getting overprescribed, so I was eating way too many of these things, but. Yeah. So I was friends with you basically.
Okay.
So what happened then? Like you were selling these things and then?
Yeah. So basically, started selling them, and then kids in my school, they just, or I would say the kids that, the cool kids, but the cool kids that kind of messed around with like other things on the side. So like. I just kind of developed that reputation. Thank you. I developed that reputation that I was just the guy to go to, and kids started coming to me and they're like, "Hey, can you get?" Because obviously, if you can get Adderall, they think that you just have other things. When really, no, I'm just getting prescribed it. But obviously I started getting addicted to the money too. So I started looking for other things that people could get or people wanted. And then literally in 9th grade, I remember, this was, got put on Adderall in the beginning of the year. By the end of the year, I was popping pain pills every day. I was taking Oxycontins. My friend, a kid came to me that was buying Adderall, and he's like, "Hey, can you get pain pills?" And I was like, "No," and I didn't even know like people took them. Like this was all just brand new experiences, right? So obviously, I started asking around. My friend's dad, I remember he was a pro skier, broke every bone in his body, and he's like, my dad has pain pills, and he's like, he doesn't take them anymore or something, or he has so many stocked up. So he actually took a bottle of 80 milligram Oxycontins back in the day when they were like the real ones that you could like rub the coating off, and kids were smoking them and everything. And I kept a pill cutter in my locker, and I would just cut up the 80 milligram oxys into 4. And sell each one for $20, each quarter for $20. So I was making $80 a pill, and I had a bottle of 120 of them. And then I was, cutting up the Adderall and selling it, and basically that just started everything. By I'd say mid 10th grade, I was completely addicted. I would not go to school unless I had pain pills to like wake up to. Like I remember, and now being 34. Like, looking back, I did the same thing looking back, or I did the same thing then that I do now. Like, it's the feeling of like, hey, I need this crutch to make this day happen how I need to, right? And to kind of fast forward, not to get too much into the weeds, but fully addicted to pain pills. I was taking, Adderall, and then 11th grade, it was Xanax and pain pills, Adderall. And then 12th grade, went to treatment for the first time, inpatient treatment. And kids in my school were like, what? Inpatient treatment? You're 18 years old. And then, things, got pretty bad. I remember my graduating day. I graduated by the skin of my teeth. They actually put me in a class that was like, it was called like a banks class. It was for kids that were truant a lot or had like drug substance issues, right? So they put me in that. I felt so labeled, that I was in there, and I was with kids that were like missing like a week, and then they'd come for like 2 days. And then I was with other kids in there that were actually like, they were doing hard drugs and all that. And I was in there, so I took on that persona too, because then, like the girls that I liked, they were like good girls, like they weren't, doing drugs. So they looked at me like, Zach's in there, and I felt lower, you know, than everyone else. So then, you know, I got into drugs really heavy, and, you know, 11th grade or 10th grade, got kicked off the basketball team for actually sweating so much from pain pills, because you get really hot and sweaty. And the coach just knew something was up, got kicked off the basketball team. So I just kind of like went all in. I know I'm kind of backing up here, but, and then, yeah, so 19 years old, tried heroin for the first time. And then, you know, meth as well. And 19 to 26 was just full blown addict, and I was selling, and that was the problem with me. And I feel like I got this from the Adderall is I fell in love with like the personality and the reputation, kind of being the guy to go to, and being just kind of looked at like that I got that feeling, you know, in 9th grade that I had when, you know, I was into other things, right? So, and then, you know, in and out of jail and all that, being locked up and in and out of treatment. I went to inpatient treatment 4 times. And then 26 years old is when I kind of changed everything. And that's a whole different story, but just moved to Arizona and just started a new life.
Change to 26. All right, we're going to put a pin in that because I want to come back to the kind of moment of change for everyone. Yeah. So what I would love to do is, Jamil, get a little bit more information on basically, let's say the down. Let's get to the low point for you too. And then I want you to come in, Jessenia, because I think that's where your experience seeing this from the outside, and you may have a little bit of insight into what was actually happening with them, and then we'll pull you in your story and come to where everybody's kind of rock bottom was, and then we'll pull us out. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So,
okay.
You know, for me on the ADHD medication, I didn't get into medical school, which was like that was
much
like
disappointment.
I was like, yeah, thank goodness, right?
Yeah.
But I
was taking this.
I couldn't
just for
imagine
that.
you being a doctor.
I couldn't imagine me being.
You're
a doctor
too funny.
I would have lost my license fast. So that was like a huge blow for me, right? Because my family they put all their stock in, like the only way you're going to be successful is if you're a doctor.
I feel like that happens a lot with like the Indian
Oh my
culture.
goodness, yeah. When we're born, our parents.
Yeah.
Are you a doctor
just
yet?
label it.
Yeah. How long until you're a doctor? And you know, it's like that's really just the pressure. It's you know, it's a status thing for sure, and it's how you. It's basically.
It's a status thing for them though,
Big
right?
time.
It's not really about the kid. Like they want the status of, I got my kid. I got a doctor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How's he doing? Well, he's a doctor.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. It's like being famous almost.
Right.
You know, like you're like you got this, you got the glow, you got the shine, right? And I understand it just because like all of my cousins became doctors. Mm-hmm. And so I'm the only one who was the outcast, right? And so and they all stopped talking to me, and it was like I didn't get in. The funniest thing is that my one cousin, we both shared a last name, he cheated on the medical school entrance exam off of me and got into medical school, and I didn't get in, right? And so like that is right there just was a shocker to me. But anyhow, I decided to, you know, take a left turn into entrepreneurship, and you know, leads me down the path of real estate, which thank goodness I excelled at. Yeah, and it became where I went. But the addiction didn't end.
Are you still on the Dexedrine at this point?
No, I quit the Dexedrine at that point. I'm like, I threw that stuff out. I was like, okay, if I don't have to sit and study anymore, I don't want this in my life. Okay. And but then, you know, that lack of energy. Right? Like you're just like lethargic, you're slow, and you don't understand why you can't get your ass up out of bed. And it's just this whole thing. Your whole biochemistry has to change.
Well, you guys also were probably in withdrawal.
I think it would be really great while on this to read some of the side effects of those medications, because that's one of the things I learned, 10, 15 years after dealing with people who had been medicated, and you look at the side effects, and it is far more severe than what you were actually medicating. And I think everybody just needs to know that. But even reading it and understanding it, like addiction, right? Patterns of addiction, psychosis, mental deterioration, sometimes even insanity. And they're on the labels, it's on the side effects, right? So these withdrawals are sometimes worse than anything you could ever imagine, but also are gateways to other severe addictions, which is, where my family ended up.
The thing is that when you get that change in mood, the change in internal state, it's like if your baseline feels broken and unwhole, like if you feel like I'm not enough, and then all of a sudden you take a pill and you're like, I am enough.
I am enough with this pill.
Or I can block that out.
Yeah. Or you numb it, suppress it, or you get that that sensation of I can do it. I got this, right? It's just that thing. It's like filling that hole. It's the receptor gets its thing, and all of a sudden, you're getting the dopamine that you need to feel good. And then I was in a really serious motor vehicle accident in 2012. I almost lost my life. 2008, sorry. I almost lost my life in that. But I broke my neck and was paralyzed. I had to relearn how to walk after a pretty intense surgery, but that led me to the opiates. And so it was like the same thing from when I was in that spot of I take this thing and I feel okay. And so many years had passed where I hadn't been on any meds, and then all of a sudden I'm in this situation where I'm in severe pain, and I get the little treat, and it was like, again, I started to feel like, I'm whole, I can do it, I feel good. And so once the healing happened, the actual bone healed, and I was still not healed. And so then the addiction in the opiate world became my next issue, right? And so I struggled with that for a decade. Even now, I just recently had a spinal injury, and I had to be on opiates again because they did a C3 to C7 fusion. And so they're in my life, and I'm like, my goodness. I remember that's when I first met you, Jessenia, and when we met, I was in the brace, right? And so and of course, as soon as I knew I was ready for them to stop, the doctor was just prescribing them. There was no end. And I could have continued to take them, but there was a point where I'm like, nope, they got to go away, And so they go away, and I go back to my normal life, but I can see how easy it is to just fall into that, and for it to be the easy button in being able to be okay.
You said you were pulled off recklessly from what the opiates, right? You ended up in withdrawal, which led to the institution.
I was pulled off recklessly from the ADHD medication personally, because I just stopped taking them. I didn't taper myself down, and so I went through a really hard time in stopping the Dexedrine, but I didn't realize that that was the thing, because I'd never felt addicted to the Dexedrine.
It's different than...
I hated it. Every time I would take it, I'd dry heave.
It's a dependence, not an addiction.
On the opiates, though, totally different. I loved them. Right? It was a completely different sensation for me with respect from the stimulants to the opiate. It was a whole other thing. But
took that pain away.
Absolutely.
I've done a lot of, after getting clean off of, sorry to interrupt you, but after getting clean off of, heroin and meth, which I feel like I was substituting the meth for the Adderall, because I wasn't taking Adderall at that time, right? So I feel like that was filling that sense of, I need energy, I need focus, I need, which I felt like I was missing after I graduated high school. But to kind of go off of what you're saying, people use for one of two reasons, and any other reason I feel like falls in one of these buckets. It's either to numb pain that you have as a child or that you've went through, or B, is to escape your reality. You just don't like your reality. You
I
want
think
to
both of them are the same, really.
Yeah.
probably, yeah. I mean, you're in pain because you don't like your reality, yeah.
Right.
But,
And it's, that's exactly what I do, right? So I don't know if I'm supposed to share my
Yeah, no,
stuff,
I think
but that's
Jessenia,
kinda-
let's bring your story in.
Well, I don't really know where to start with
were you
with
done?
my
Sorry,
story.
I didn't.
Yeah, no.
Sorry
I'm
about
done.
that. I just.
Well, I think you.
So mine, I say I do two things. So I think that, one of the things that I'm currently doing in kind of social media or through work is that I'm an extreme trauma survivor. And that really is what started my relationship with addiction and ADHD and being exposed to those patterns. My father was a drug addict. And he was definitely neurodivergent, so he likely had ADHD that he was self-medicating. And, we all have some type of symptoms, but my brother and family members were worse. But we grew up with addiction. We grew up with medicine being readily available, so mostly illegally. We grew up with a lot of exposure to drugs and addiction, but it was the trauma through the whole situation that allowed me to be, a healer. So today I read people and help people do what I call kind of like interdimensional therapy. And I say it's interdimensional because we work on past lives and we see patterns internally and through their energy field and then presently. So I help people work on the wound. And I actually ended up somehow in this interesting niche of people who have neurodivergent labels, like a lot of my family members, and didn't know. So I am able to kind of see it in them, right? I'm able to see how their brain functions.
What is a neurodivergent?
So neurodivergent is the umbrella in which ADHD lives in. So you have like dyslexia, there's some other labels. What I've learned with my research and what I'm doing is that sometimes there is a misdiagnosis. So it can be something like past life trauma creating side effects or connection issues or thought process issues, or it could be something like brain trauma, which went undiagnosed. So I had a client who hired me to read their child, and their child was a full-grown adult who was misdiagnosed autistic. And when I read the child, I found out that she had shaken the child to brain damage as a baby. And because we didn't know about baby shaken syndrome at that time too much, she was able to just he was luckily healed enough to survive it, but not enough to not have long-term damage. So he was misdiagnosed.
No, it's different.
He was misdiagnosed, and she wasn't going to share any of that because obviously it's abuse. But it's really interesting how many people are misdiagnosed because they have some type of brain trauma or brain development issue or something, and they just assumed something like autism or ADHD.
How did that conversation go with the mom? Were you like,
she
do you
was,
remember shaking your baby?
She was very... So the way that these conversations go, my job is to help the child, right? Yeah. So for me, I focused on when the symptoms started, what symptoms surfaced, and how to be a best parent for him or how to help him with what's going on now. And I helped him kind of have a voice because he was mostly non-communicating. So I helped him share the things that he wanted and how to make his life better because his mother was not healthy enough to hear, anything else besides that. But for me, it wasn't about like shaming the mother. It was about helping the child. So I always say I stick to the ways we can help. So I focused on helping him communicate his wants and needs and how to make his life better and stuff. And that's what we got down to. He, like many other people, like you guys, like your stories, felt completely ostracized by his label, right? So he was really struggling, not fitting in, not making friends, not having social connections. So part of it was helping him join a community. He wasn't able to really communicate with people. So he told me he could use the internet. So we were setting up chats for him and helping him get an account online. So we were just finding ways to help him with the symptoms. But what I've learned in the process is that the medications we're using create more damage. The label creates more damage. And these children are immediately, and I don't think it's a personal issue. I think it's a school system issue, right? If you put 24 kids in a class and you expect them to sit still and follow directions, first of all, you are insane. Children don't do that.
How many children do you have?
I have 6, right? So
some good evidence.
And so when you have that weird expectation and these teachers have zero time and zero energy and zero ability to control a classroom, of course that one child who can't sit still, who has ants in his pants, who disrupts class, who is a goofball, who can't focus, is going to go straight to the office and now be labeled and be ostracized and be, demeaned for being too active, for not liking to sit for 8 hours at a time, which we weren't really biologically made to do anyway, especially children. So we develop a lot of social issues, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of I don't fit in, I'm weird. And now we're medicating other things, right? Now we're stuck with depression and other patterns. So I've learned that one of the things that works with me, especially growing up and with my family, was what I call symptom hacking. That we don't medicate symptoms, we understand them, and then we work with them. So like I said, I have 6 kids and they're all somewhere on the neurodivergent kind of spectrum in different ways. And we deal with the issues that come up and we reprogram the issues that come up with beneficial support. Like Jamil said, if you have a lot of energy, then you need to go run before you have to focus on your homework. So like one of my sons with ADHD, it's like, go for a jog, come back, we'll do your homework, right? So you have to kind of listen to it. And then help people with that. But, congratulations to you guys for making it out. And, my story is a little bit different. A lot of my family members didn't make it out. They're still struggling with addiction. And, my father died because of it. So it's a lot of people just aren't lucky enough or strong enough or have the support and services to get through something like that. And, to you too, congratulations. You had your own healing story. You came out, you figured it out. But I've realized how sad and difficult and ostracizing the pattern is, and how it also, in many ways, like I was saying this earlier to you guys, I believe it's almost like the evolution of humanity to have these types of patterns or things show up. Like, for example, I always say, I wish I could bottle my kids' energy, right? I wish you could sell that, because how many of us complain that we have zero energy, yet these kids have like constant gas in their tanks? That's awesome. You could do a million things. I feel like you guys are super successful, and you can change the subjects you're working. Like my daughter had a 4.0 GPA because I worked with her. I taught her. So when she was like, I love dinosaurs, we learned about dinosaurs for 5 minutes. And when she was done with it in 5 minutes, she's like, I want to learn about the space. I'm like, cool, we're learning about space. But when you're in a classroom where you don't have that opportunity or that ability or that type of one-on-one education, you get ostracized and you get humiliated and you get degraded, and then now we have all these other things we need to heal from.
Or like they'll tell you you have a learning disability,
Yeah, right.
and then you're like, oh, I do,
Stupid.
and then you start selling yourself.
A lot of your
that.
guys' stories happen around the same age too.
Well,
right?
yeah, and what I find kind of it's interesting that you're saying that kids are feeling. I mean, I think it's got to be different for everyone. I know it sounds like we all felt a little different. Right? Because
that's what I was going to say, the age. Who doesn't feel different in the height of puberty around 14, 15 years old?
That's true, but now we're just throwing drugs at all the kids. It's normal to be medicated.
Right.
Like there's a school
at the most fragile time of our lives.
Yeah.
I think
hormonally,
the teachers,
developmentally, like we're just figuring out who we are, and they're just throwing prescriptions at people that they're.
There's a school in New York City, like a very, very bougie school. It's a private school. I don't know the name of it, but I do know that it's a school specifically for, or the advertisement is for specifically for neurodiverse kids. But here's the thing, like that's not what this is. This is the wealthy of the wealthy sending their kids to a very private school. All the kids are medicated up to their eyeballs because they all have some diagnosis that has been given to them through a test that takes 5 minutes to take with leading questions that was made up by about 7 people in one room that has absolutely no biological evidence to support it. And you've got these 8-year-olds, these 9-year-olds, these 10-year-olds on multiple psychiatric drugs in order to manage their conditions. Their parents are medicated up to their eyeballs as well. Absolutely nobody is thinking or paying attention to any long-term side effects. They don't even know their kid at this point. I mean, like, how would you even know that your daughter loved dinosaurs in space if she was so medicated all she wanted to do was sit in front of an iPad? Right? Like, how do you... And I think this is really what the core of the issue we're talking about is all of us do very, very different things in this world that are out of the norm. None of us are working in an office 9 to 5. We've all worked for ourselves. I'm sure we've all experienced the bullshit that comes with that. And I don't think any of us would be here if we didn't just come out a little different. And at least for me, there was a 15-year period where I was medicated, and all that did for me was basically numb out fear-based learning. So basically what I mean by that is if I didn't like something in the world, if I was experiencing something that was bad for me, I didn't have the emotional capacity or like the spiritual connection to myself because I was so drugged up to make a change to stop that bad thing from happening to me. And so it just cycled, right? And
it numbs your ability to feel in general, correct?
It numbs your ability to feel in general, but you know, we think that we don't want to feel
bad. How scary
bad.
is that? Right. How scary is that? You can't process the stuff you're going through.
It's also really welcome when you're in pain.
Well,
right?
You were saying you were grieving your dad. How do you ever get through the grief if you're never allowed to feel it?
Oh, well, I didn't until I was 30 and I was off the drugs. But the thing is that I also didn't want to feel bad, right? And so what happens, though, is you just end up getting so far away from yourself. It's kind of like in flight. They talk about, you know, making 1 degree turns. We all turned 1 degree when we went to our first doctor, right? And 10, 15, 30 years later, whatever it is, we were all so far off course that we didn't recognize who we are. And then it's really painful to get back on track. And I feel like that's what we're doing to our kids now is we're just slightly moving them in the wrong direction. And we have no idea how to handle it, how to manage it. We end up in jail you said something really beautiful in our group chat, which was that you're on the other side of it now, but it had massive consequences to your friends and your family and your relationships. I basically don't remember my entire 20s because my memory was so negatively affected. I was in a life I hated. I was suicidal. And now that I'm on the other side of it and I just see it happening left, right, and center with these kids, and then you talk about how you parent. And it sounds like, okay, here's an example of how you parent an individual, how you nurture the differences in them. And I just wonder, I mourn every day the loss of who I would be if I had never been medicated. It still kills me because I think my life would be completely different. And I just wish that somebody had the sense to
I always say
watch
my
over
kids
me
are
you're watching over your kids.
Right. And so it brings me to a lot of really great points. One of them is that we live in a world where emotional intelligence is brand new, right? And a lot of what I do is teach emotional intelligence.
What does that word mean? I don't know what that word means.
Through my own healing, through my own trauma, through everything I've experienced. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand what we feel, why we feel it, and how to properly communicate or heal that or face that.
Brand new. What is that word? Or brand new?
Brand new.
Oh, you said brand new.
Oh, yeah, brand new.
Sorry.
You were definitely brand new.
Sorry.
I was
new word.
Wait, this, yeah, what is this?
And so what we're finding is that a lot of us grew up in, they say it's kind of like the millennial curse. I am technically a millennial. And a lot of us grew up kind of over analyzing. Like I said, I had a very, very traumatic childhood and past lots of physical, sexual, emotional abuse that we were just naturally kind of thrown into. So my understanding of emotional intelligence came from doing the work myself, really trying to dig myself out of my own suicidal thoughts, my own anxiety, my own depression, my own self-sabotage. And that didn't really start for me until I became a teenage mom, right? And so when I became a teenage mom, it wasn't about me anymore. It was about trying to be a better person for her. And I would say my kids really saved me, but also they're my greatest teachers because if they need it, I'm going to figure it out, right? So if they challenged me or they're upset or something's going on, it's my job to figure it out. And I always say that, kids, there's no such thing as a bad child. There is no such thing. There's children having experiences. When we get really, really good with emotional intelligence, we look for the experience instead of seeing it as a problem. So a lot of us grew up in a world where our emotions were not understood at all, where they were repressed, where they were rejected, or where our parents felt afraid of us feeling, oh, they're sad or they're anxious or they're upset. Let's just pill on it. Let's just distract them. Let's just not have have that experience because, again, emotional intelligence is fairly new now. So I've learned, obviously through healing and working through those things, I've cleared all of my own symptoms, which I think is fascinating because I had a million things and a million people don't understand the long-term effect of trauma and how it literally rewrites your brain and it creates anxiety and it creates disconnection and high levels of stress can create permanent issues or illnesses, bipolar disorder, emotional disorders. These things come from extensive trauma and imbalanced hormones and the inability to heal or face our emotions or understand our emotions. And that's where my family is at right now. Those of us who didn't become addicts have extreme labels or diagnoses of, borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder, and all the things that come from extreme emotional trauma and never facing it, right? Yeah. Constantly repressing it, letting it control you, letting it control your life. But I think what it all comes down to is the development of emotional intelligence will free you. When we know how we feel and we can communicate how we feel and we can clear that, we don't medicate teenagers for feeling at the height of their feeling, right? You guys were all the same age. And that to me, that's a purge cycle because when you're in that, so I call purge cycles a place where we have to release emotions we have not had the ability to confront or communicate. We have two of them. We have one of them around 6 or 7. So you realize like kids are, emotional and explosive and parents want to call it tantruming and punish them without actually understanding or talking to them about what they're going through. And then the second one would be as a teenager. So a lot of us get diagnosed then because our parents are just so uncomfortable or unfamiliar with what it is we're going through and they want to heal it. But also in, corporate America, there's no time to sit with your child for 3 hours and talk about their feelings. So even if they wanted to, we do live in a really difficult society to make those things. I created my whole business around my kids. I've been my own boss since I was 18. So I was able to prioritize them and they were always my priority. So I would figure out a way to make the time. And one of my favorite quotes Spirit says all the time is, time is an illusion. We make time for things that matter, or we're forced to make time for those things that matter.
There isn't really long-term studies on the long-term side effects.
There is not a single long-term side effect on the effects of psychiatric drugs on children or developing brains.
I was literally just having this conversation with somebody a couple weeks ago, very recent, about, I was like, how... At what point of my life where I would be like, hey, is this like a side effect from being on Adderall for so long? What if by the time, we're 50, we're just like shot,
Yep. There are connections with psychiatric drugs and dementia. There's something called medication spellbinding, which is it's a word that I really wish would end up more in the lexicon. So medication spellbinding is when a person becomes so basically inebriated by the drug that they're on that they cannot comprehend that the drug itself is causing the negative effects in their life.
I was going to say that. I feel like the spiritual connection in my own perspective, because that's a lot of what I do, I feel like it is my connection with spirit that allows that outside voice. And I would say the outsider becomes the observer. And a lot of people, like Jamil said, he was kind of ostracized and stuff and different from his family and the weirdo, but you were also likely the generational breaker, right? You were different. You did things differently. You taught your family a lot. You were the outsider, but you also became the observer and therefore were able to change some of those patterns and do things really differently. But it's the idea that it is our mind is very linear and very self-preserving and very programmable. And if we are misprogrammed, there's no way to shatter that reality and say, this isn't good for you, right? And when we have this pattern, like I work with a lot of trauma survivors, and it's either you end up exactly like your parents or the extreme opposite of your parents. You overcompensate. So for me, it was like a constant fear. Like I was terrified of becoming addicted because I had 2 addicts for parents, and then my family members were falling down the same pattern. So it was always like, I remember when I had my first kid at 17, I picked up smoking cigarettes just because I wanted to feel like a badass. I was like, I just like, you know, take care of my kid and I'm going to school full time and working full time. And I was like, I'm bored. I should still be a kid. I'm going to pick up smoking cigarettes. And I remember I stopped it because I was like, oh, can't get addicted. Even though I hated them and I was trying to force myself to smoke them, I was like, can't do it. Can't get addicted. Can't like pick up a habit. But that's also a trauma response. Overcompensation is a trauma response, you know, so you can't be so aggressive the other way that like you refuse to have experiences, that you refuse to let yourself be human or, you know, have a drink on occasion because you're terrified of addiction, right? So it's the fear.
Yeah. Just like that story, I'm sure that you guys have heard that, that story of the alcoholic dad. Have you guys heard that one? And the two sons.
The tale as old as time? I mean, what story specifically are you talking about?
So basically, there was, you know, a dad, he had two sons, and the dad was an alcoholic, drank every single day, you know, beat the sons, just was on their ass about everything, yelling at them all the time, very physically and mentally abusive. Anyways, you know, time goes on, the two sons both, I think they were twins. Yeah, they were twins. And then now in their 40s, one actually became super successful, like, you know, owns a bunch of businesses and is just, you know, very smart, going on the right path. And the other one was actually, you know, in and out of treatment, jail, you know, just couldn't get his life together. I think he was homeless for a while. And then they did an interview with these two guys at one point, and one of the questions that they asked was, you know, how did you, you know, to the first son, how did you end up so successful? I mean, it's crazy, you know, with where you came from that you're so successful. And he's like, well, you know, my dad was an alcoholic. He beat me. Like, I didn't really have a choice. Like, I didn't want to end up like him, right? And then they interviewed the other son, and they said, you know, hey, like, where did things go wrong? Like, what, you know, obviously, you know, you've struggled like your whole life. Things still aren't really going right. He's like, well, I didn't really have a choice. My dad beat me, and he was an alcoholic, you know? So it's kind of like, just like what you were saying, right? Like it's you know,
The overcompensation.
It's your interpretation of it, and you know, whether are you going to make it an excuse to be better or an excuse to be worse, you know?
You know, I just want to be devil's advocate here when we're talking about trauma and the way traumas repeat, but in that type of case, I get a lot of those clients too, because you could be very successful and still very damaged. And it's the overcompensation.
I think most successful people are extremely damaged.
Right. It's the burnout. It's that I'm never good enough. So I've got to work my ass off, have 26 companies, like keep pushing, keep like trying to be someone and lose myself in the process. So I just want to make a point that you could be very, very successful and still carry so much damage and be self-destructive. Because I think a lot of people want to label, you know, those who don't look like they're doing good on the outside. But I have a lot of very high-achieving clients who they completely struggle with burnout. They completely struggle with terrible self-esteem. And that's why they do it. That's why they keep pushing harder. That's why they keep putting themselves out there to literal exhaustion, right? They become almost now addicted to the stress.
I relate with that a lot.
Yeah.
I mean,
and then
like,
they may end up in addiction patterns too sometimes, because like you fill up your schedule so much, suddenly you can't keep up with it. Suddenly you think there's something wrong with you. Now you're on XYZ pills to accomplish those goals instead of fixing the problem, which is I was never good enough as a child, so I'm constantly overcompensating to feel valuable or important. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point, and I'm sure all of us have that to some extent, you know. I mean, even still to this day, like when you were just saying that, I was like, that's me, you know, like to the T. Like I'll work till 1, 2 in the morning, and sometimes even later. I just don't want to stop, like, and I don't have that stop.
Do you not want to stop, or are you afraid to stop? Is there like a fear sometimes to slow
absolutely.
down? Usually
I think
it's
it
a
is
fear
a
to
fear.
face ourselves.
It's a fear. It's a fear because I feel like I could always be better. I'm never in a place where I'm like, man, I've accomplished a lot, you know, like I've
You can't celebrate yourself.
I can't celebrate. There's no time to, because there's something in me, and I don't know if it's something that happened when I was younger that I can't remember, because a lot like you, I don't really remember my childhood. Like I remember some things that happened, but like there's a lot that I don't, and I feel like Adderall just kind of like blanked all that out, or
Just a side effect.
or
memory
also
loss.
Memory loss is a
when
side
I was 14, when I got put on it, my brain was developing, right? So like, did my brain stop developing at that time and then start using Adderall as a crutch to develop from there? So there's a lot of different things, but I mean,
It wasn't just your brain, it was your entire system.
Oh, yeah.
Like your hormones
Yeah.
are affected, your gut is hugely affected. I mean, the whole body, the whole system is affected.
yeah,
by
and
these
I,
things.
Teeth,
I want to
I've
make
noticed
sure to
that
say
teeth are
this too, because this is really, really important.
Breathing.
And I feel like I would regret it if I didn't say it. You know, we're sitting here, you know, talking about how, you know, Adderall played a horrible effect in our lives, but I also feel, and it might be what I think you were talking about, it might be, you know, what I'm telling myself, but I also feel like that it gave me a drive, and it gave me determination like I don't know if I would have had before.
Medication did, or,
Yes.
or going through the experience.
I would say the being stimulated every day stimulates something in my mind to just have that, like, you know, get after it mentality.
And so, like, are you hardwired now without, you know, a substance to mimic that sensation that you had on the medicine?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that, you know, in the key moments of like, you know, when I started becoming an entrepreneur and, you know, started selling legal things instead of illegal things.
I always say I got my business skills from Dad.
Yeah, exactly.
Being a drug dealer.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You know, so like, but yeah, I, you know, I feel like it was just that stimulation of my mind and, you know, determination. I don't know if I would have been extremely different without having, you know, been put on Adderall, but
I think it's almost like you had a moment in your reality where you realized you were capable. And that feeling of being capable is kind of what helped you push harder and discover different avenues of yourself that you may not have gotten if you had medication, because again, the focus might have been difficult, or might have been difficult to function, or you might have felt like, you know, like I said, like an outsider. Sometimes we have like a cast, you know, and I always tell that to clients, that I'll never say like, you shouldn't take medicine. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to play one. But what I tell them is to treat it like a cast, right? If you're suicidal and you think that you're going to take your life, absolutely, please go get help, right? Go see a medical professional. And they may do something to flood you with some positive hormones for a moment so you can live here long enough. But the whole idea is, if you don't face your trauma, your emotions, the way you feel about yourself, the stuff that happened when you were 5 or 6, your sexual abuse, you're going to stay depressed. And the medication is just going to get more and more intense. And you're not actually solving the issue. You're constantly casting the issue, which does actually create other side effects and issues. So I always say, as long as you're aware of that, we were going to talk about, like, is there a good time to medicate?
Yeah, I'm going to push
sure
back on a lot of this.
I'm not sure there is a great time to medicate,
you're
but
just stacking them up.
I always feel like you have to give yourself a chance to stay alive, but that you have to consider that there is work that needs to be done, absolutely, or you're never going to really get any long-term results. And that's the scary part, that I've seen panic attacks like almost kill people, right? I've seen depression almost kill people many, many times. But if you don't actually heal or face the stuff, face the emotions, understand them, work through this stuff, you're just going to keep running back to the hospital and running back to a prescription and running back to a doctor for a quick fix.
So I agree. I completely agree in the sense that at the end of the day, there's a root cause problem that's not being mostly addressed, right? And so if all of this medication of kids and adults was working, we wouldn't see rates of suicide going up. We wouldn't see rates of depression, mental illness, disability due to mental illness, homelessness, all of that addiction. It would not be going up. So I think, it doesn't take a PhD to realize that what we're doing is not working very well, right? But the points where I want to push back or at least provide more context for, the first one is Zach, a little bit like we were just talking about how it's kind of replacing one thing for another, right? Like I can, in our kind of three-dimensional society, you can very much make a straight line and a parallel between having lots of money, having lots of business, feeling really busy as being successful. But who's more comfortable in their own skin? The four of us or some monk that just sits underneath a tree and meditates all day and quote unquote does nothing, right? I mean, I would kill for the peace that could come from knowing that there is nothing else to do other than be an experience, right? That is, there's billions of dollars in industry trying to teach us how to just be with ourselves. And so, I think that we can never know whether or not your drive and your curiosity and your ability to solve problems and connect and like be the go-to guy is a direct line from being a 13-year-old drug dealer, or if you would have come across that on your own. I mean, it's all connected now, but I would say that probably the work and the challenge is to figure out why that has to be the case for you to feel whole, right? And the problem is that when people rely on these psychiatric drugs because they think that's going to make them feel whole, what it's actually doing is just pushing them further and further away from their true north. And you help people come back to their true north.
Right. And I was saying something similar, that I just feel like for a moment he felt capable. So then he realized like, oh, I'm capable of more, and learning from that, but not that it was a great thing. I feel like you must have been born an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Not all of us become drug dealers,
Yeah.
Where I do, kind of really see a big problem in the narrative. And I'm not a doctor either. We don't play it on the internet, but so much of my work is about unwrapping the history of mental illness and the narrative of psychiatric drugs, how we got here. And I'm getting to the point where I'm thinking that actually one of the most dangerous things you can do as someone who's experiencing suicidal ideation or who is depressed is to go to a doctor. I think it is unfortunately one of the most dangerous things you can do, because 95% of the time they are going to put you on a psychiatric drug. You may even, if you tell someone you have suicidal ideation, or you tell the wrong person, you're committed on a 72-hour hold, and they're pumping you up with more drugs that we know cause suicidality. That's part of the problem. So part of the alternative is, I think that the first thing, I think it helps to understand the history of mental illness and the history of medication, because there was a point in time where depression and these episodes of melancholia, or whatever they called it, was considered a temporary thing. You would go talk to a psychotherapist about it, or a friend, or a pastor, or whatever it was, and there was an understanding that this was something that was going to get better. There was depression wasn't even a thing that Eli Lilly, or it was Lilly at the time, Lilly didn't even think they could have a drug for depression in the late 80s when Prozac was coming onto market, because it wasn't a marketable thing. They created the narrative when the drug came onto the market in order to say like, oh, this thing is massively underdiagnosed, so many people are suffering, go here, take this drug that we're going to give you, right? So the first thing is just to reframe. There's so much fear in our society about suicide, about depression, about mental illness, that when that comes into our field, people get really scared of it. And I think it's because we recognize it within ourselves, right? Who hasn't walked around and thought that they wished like things would be a little easier if I just wasn't here?
It's hard.
Yeah, it's just hard, right? But the fact that we cannot really talk about that in a safe environment without, especially if you're a kid, like, I don't remember exactly the first time where I kind of wished I wasn't alive as a kid, but I know it was normal.
I remember I was like 5.
All go through it.
Yeah.
And it's just this recognition of like, oh God, it's hard to be a human, I didn't ask to be here. And
Right.
that's a
I was
lot
like, I'm
of
done with
feelings,
this shit.
right? Like, why are we supposed to just be okay with everything that's happening? That's the whole point. So I think, one, if there was a lot more safe spaces to be able to talk about that, people would feel less other. They would feel less like threatened by the outside. I know there are some organizations that actually allow people to talk about, suicidal ideation without fear of commitment. There's a group called the Hearing Voices Network for people with schizophrenia, and it's a beautiful, beautiful group. I love the idea because schizophrenics are also often dealing with hearing voices, right? And antipsychotics are a horrible drug to be on. They can help symptoms go away for a short to medium period of time, but over time, people really don't tend to do well. Gray matter gets reduced. It's a really rough drug to be on.
And it usually ends up with it being upped, correct? Like usually they get more and more.
Yeah, and then they're just zonked
Right.
out. They
or
can't
now
take
they're
care of
doubling
themselves.
up and they're taking
Right.
2 different scripts for the same thing because they're not getting the same results. I have a lot of clients that have been there and done that.
They're less effective
very
over
sad.
time. But the Hearing Voices Network is a group that has been specifically created for people who don't want to be on antipsychotics to manage their schizophrenic symptoms. So they literally just give these people space to hear the voices and talk about them, and it, like, as an experience that they are having as a human, as opposed to like, this is a disease we need to medicate. But no, like, what are they saying? What can we learn from them? How can you coexist and cohabitate? And it's simply just the fact that these people feel like they have a safe space to talk about this, where their choice is not to cope with medication or to cope with like scary symptoms. They actually get better and lead more normal lives. And so I think that is one of the ways out of this. Another way is bringing a lot more diversity and variety of support into the world of therapeutics. Not everybody does well with CBT or EDMR or anything that's very like, we're in a box and we're going to check boxes, right? For some people, it's great. It was horrible for me. I imagine your clients don't come to you first. They've probably gone to other people before they come to you. And
literally tried everything usually before they come to me.
And so we just need to open that up. I mean, it would be huge. It would be huge if like people could use insurance to pay for you.
I would love that. Actually, I'm
Right?
working on that. So you've actually just kind of like, I would like to blimp this into my interdimensional kind of view of the world because it's a perfect door here. But when we're talking about, like I said earlier, emotional intelligence is so fairly new. Mm-hmm. And when we're talking about this horrible fear we have with labels and these mental illnesses, we have to remember that it was less than 200 years ago where women were being given lobotomies for having periods, for having hormones.
They were giving ice pick lobotomies in the 50s and 60s.
Right. So the idea that we are afraid of having mental illness or having strong emotion or not being understood is very real and comes from a very real history of having that repression and that inability to like express or connect or just have strong feelings. But that eventually does kind of collapse. And Spirit was saying this thing to me one day that I thought was really fascinating. They said, how about if all mental illnesses, how about if the idea of labels was to understand them and not to medicate, to ostracise, to limit, to
identify with
right.
them.
And I think that really shifted the way I help everybody that comes to me, but also, I take it on a really personal level that if everybody is an expression of their circumstances or their damage or their experience, then we're all kind of just carrying our wounds and projecting our wounds left and right. That there is no label that can't really be healed or understood or managed with compassion or loved or, mended in that kind of sense. But that fear will have somebody take a label and it's like, well, I don't actually want to understand you. I just want to be afraid of you.
Yeah. Sorry, I just had this kind of, as you were saying
and
that.
Another thing that I've learned that I just kind of want to put out there, and it is definitely a theory because it's based on my work. And I am working, one of my missions here is to create more scientific evidence about the work that I'm doing because I think it would be beautiful someday if something I'm doing could be like paid by insurance and help people.
Have you done a deep dive into any of the research being done on past lives at the University of Virginia?
No, I work through the Edgar Cayce Institute. So I know that there's a lot of stuff being done there too. But one of my missions is to create some of my own evidence with what I've been noticing with clients and stuff. And I realized that a lot of mental health diagnoses are in fact unresolved past life traumas. So something like schizophrenia, they're sometimes almost incorrectly anchored to past lives and hearing ghosts or entities that are essentially, communicating with them, and
this
they don't
makes
even
sense
know
to
it.
me.
They don't even know it, and we
Zach's
can
I don't know about this, but it makes
we
sense
can
to
get
me.
results. We can get results.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. But I mean, you have to have an open mind to consider that there are actual solutions to these things.
Yeah, and so that's where I think the research at the University of Virginia is really interesting, because we're starting to see even in I'm so frustrated sometimes having to say, like, we're starting to see, as if we need to wait for the scientific community to get on board with, like,
when
some
science
stand.
is literally checking off and signing off on kids being drugged and medicated and calling it science.
There's that, but it's also
wild.
Humans have been around for a very long time, surviving for quite a long time, doing unbelievable things. We've both been in Egypt recently. The pyramids were made using technology we don't understand. Like, we're not necessarily at the apex of human intelligence right now.
They have it figured out, but they can't say anything because Big Pharma would be shut down.
Well, that's part of it. But so at the University of Virginia, there's a researcher, it's Jim or John something, and they talk to kids who basically, families come there because they're like, my 3-year-old's talking about being a pilot in World War II, and he has names. He can recognize himself.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, he can recognize himself in planes. Like, there's a whole story, and these people, the parents are like, we're from Ohio. We like this makes no sense. And so what's fascinating is that not only do these kids have full recollections and full family trees, they're able to recognize their old selves in photos. They're able to recognize other people by name. And they're usually 5 years old or less. But the most fascinating thing to me is that it's not uncommon that the kids will have birthmarks somewhere on their body in the same place where they had a mortal wound in that life. And this is all, there's thousands of documented
cases.
cases.
There's so much science around it already.
This is very, very high level research being done at the University of Virginia.
Mind blown, Zach.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
But what I kind of wanted to say when I stopped to write this down is, I think that a big thing about what's happening here is the world is getting more diverse. We have more costumes to put on, if you will. There's more ways to be a human, more ways to express yourself, different things to get into. And the common thread here with all of us is that you didn't want to be a doctor, and you were being forced to sit down and be a doctor and not be who you are. And the only way for you to do that was to take a very powerful drug in order to fit that. You wanted to flirt with a girl, not learn about atoms. And presumably you wanted to be doing other things. And the only way to keep you learning about atoms was to drug you. I was grieving. I had no clue who I was anymore. The only way for me to continue in the mold of getting good grades and go to college and do all the things I was supposed to do was for them to drug me. And all of that is pushing down who we were and who we were meant to be. And we're all lucky that we've kind of come around and found that again
all the time, that the best thing you could do for your child is let them be an individual and lose your story of who you want them to be. Absolutely. And we all get that shoved down. We all get that repressed. And then we have to figure it out in our 20s or 30s. And it's very confusing. It's like at that point, we should have already figured it out. And we get in a lot of destructive relationships because of it. Because we're dating for the person people forced us to become, not the person we wanted to be.
Mm-hmm. So I would love to know if everyone could go through, how did you, both of you, get yourself out?
Well, for me, the remedy was meditation.
Oh, what kind? Let's
Well,
get into the
It
weeds.
started off with, because I remember it was early into my marriage. I was still addicted to pain medication and alcohol. And it was tough, right? Because she would literally watch me drink till I passed out on the, back patio. And I know that there were moments where she shared this with me that her and I are no longer together. We're the best of friends though, but she shared a lot with me of things that she had been through in our relationship. One of them being, I think I'm going to I'm going to wake up in the morning one day and he's going to be out there dead. And it could have happened, right? The way I was going. But I remember I was reading a book called You're a Badass by Jen Sincero. It's such a like fluffy personal development book. It's amazing. And it was it was exactly what I needed at the time that I picked it up. And in there she was talking about how everyone that she knew that was successful meditated. She didn't know the science behind it. She didn't know why it worked. And she just knew that everybody that she knew that had made it in life, for whatever reason, took some time to go inside and contemplate or breathe. And so I said, well, what do I got to lose? Right? I suck. Like I'm nothing's going right. I'm unhappy. Everything's really tough. And so I remember waking up with a hangover one morning and just downloading the Headspace app and starting there. And, 5-minute meditations turned into 10 minutes, turned into 20, turned into diving into Yogananda and Kriya Yoga and diving into deeper forms and then to breath work. And, how I literally saved myself was going into the world of energetics, right? Really understanding myself from an energetic level. And I'm still a work in progress. I by no means feel cured. I don't feel like I'm where I could be, or of course I've become a successful, I have on paper, I live a very successful life. And like you had described, I have, like any successful person, I have a tremendous amount of insecurity that drives that ambition. And so I'm still working through that. And I understand that it's a part of what I'm here to go through and learn about myself. And so I know though that for me, if I hadn't gone inside and if I hadn't really tried to understand myself and who I am on a much more deeper level than just the parts that make me, but who I really am, that I don't think I would have survived it. And I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for that first dive into meditation to every day. Like, it is a non-negotiable for me. I will do it. I will do that work every single day because I know that it's my new drug. It's the thing that I can change my emotional state in 20 minutes. I can, if I'm feeling down, I can feel great in 20 minutes. And yeah, it's actually faster than a pill if you think about it, because that takes 45 to dissolve. And so I can legit be a completely different person by just breathing. And the fact that we've been given that gift is incredible.
How has your outside world changed based on how your inner world has changed?
It's a complete reflection of it. Because when I was really going through it, if you saw my outside world, I was going through it. Mm-hmm. And
can you give us an example?
Yeah, economically, mm-hmm. in my relationship with myself, with the people in my world, how I would respond to pressure and I'm not telling you my life is perfect today by any means. I go through things too. Like, there's ups and downs all the time. How I respond to those ups and downs is so different from how mm-hmm. I would respond then. There was a time in my life when something wasn't going my way. It was right to the liquor store, mm-hmm. right? Now it's like, okay, something's not going my way. What can I do? How do I? And if I don't have a solution for it, well, it's time to get creative. And the only way that I know to tap into my creativity is to tap into my being, tap into who I am. And in time, what is supposed to help me through the situation comes knocking at the door. Mm-hmm. And it's really insane that it works that way, but it truly does. Like, the what you need will find you when you need it if you remain receptive to it. Mm-hmm. But it's releasing I got to control this. It's got to be on my time. It's just discipline, and it's made me more disciplined the more that I've gone in there. My inner world is 1,000% reflected in my outer world, for sure.
Zac, how did we go from 26 doing meth and heroin to suddenly moving to Arizona? And now we're on this couch 8 years later.
Yeah.
And you're the guy we all call when our Instagrams get hacked.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, there's.
Which, by the way, I mean, still a drug, so he's still kind of hooking us up.
What, Instagram?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
He's
just
like, hey, I got
socially
you.
acceptable
You need your
digital
dopamine,
drugs.
I got the hook up.
it's
I
the
know a
word.
guy in Meta who knows a guy in
Yeah,
Meta.
it's the worst drug because, like, yeah, I mean, people, you know, they need the attention. They need to see what everyone else is doing. They need to compare their lives to other people. And when that gets taken away, I mean, it's crazy the stories that I've heard.
I bet you
before.
just like people whose
Oh,
either
they-
financial lives or their entire
Like,
identities are based around their followers, and then it's gone in 1 second.
That, yeah. I mean, people just get crazy about it. Like right now, like I had to put my phone down there. It was vibrating too much. Like my phone just doesn't stop. Like people are just like, is my account back yet? Is it back? 2 hours later, I'm like, no, it might take like 72 hours. Like just chill.
Do you think
By
your
tonight, they'll be like,
experience?
is there something wrong with it? Are you sure it's coming? Like, but times that by 50 people,
Yeah.
you know, like a day. Like
Well, it's like your experience with addiction prepared you to deal with a bunch of addicts.
oh my God. Well,
They're
I mean,
calling
I
it
got into
business.
sales. So like I got into sales, like after I got clean, when I was 26, I got into network marketing. And then I got into door-to-door sales, and I was actually, this is actually going to be a good point, is I became the #1 rep in the nation.
Mary Kay.
2 years in a row. No, not the MLM. The MLM company went under. And then that's right there. What made me realize is I will never be susceptible or, I'll never be vulnerable with only one stream of income again, ever, because I was getting clean. I was in, I actually got I got a job, just for like, I think it was like 3 months at Staples, and it was my first like ever like real job. And I was like, I did not get clean to fucking do this shit. Like, I was like, what the hell? And I hated my life. And like, and so I started talking to this guy that did network marketing, got into that. That was a little bit easier. I was just selling people travel packages. Anyways, company went under after I was getting residual income from them. You know, promised myself I'd never have one stream again. That kind of gave me that drive to just get into, you know, many different avenues of business. And then got into door-to-door, and then I actually did door-to-door pest control for 4 years. I was #1 in the nation, broke every record 2 years in a row, because I broke all the company records and the industry records. And then the next year I came back and re-broke those own records. And then I got out of it because I was like, I'm not being pushed here. Started my own. That's when I kind of started growing my brand and social media thing about 8 years ago. Really became fascinated, I guess you could say, with like the influencer type or influencer like idea that, you know, people could just get recognized and famous online. And I think that goes back to like something maybe I was missing in my past, or like maybe something that I craved when I was, you know, selling, because I knew that I wasn't getting it in a genuine way, maybe. But yeah, so everything is just repeating itself. It's just turning into something different, you know, like
Evolving. It's evolving.
Yeah. But
because you're doing the work,
Yeah.
which is exactly how you get the results.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I won't get too much in the weeds on like what that changing point was for me, but basically it was just I was so down and so beat up and so tired of being sick and tired. And this is obviously when I was 26, right? When I decided to make the changes. I first changed for my mom, because I was so tired of disappointing her and saying I was going to change and I wouldn't, and you know, and I was breaking her heart, and she literally told me, and this was kind of the thing that did it. because I had tried, I over, 8 years, I'd tried to get clean many times. Like, it wasn't my first time trying, but it was the time that did it is because she basically told me that, the way that I was living and, in a jail and like I had overdosed like 3 times, back up the ambulance, like saved my life, like all these crazy stories people hear about. And, I was part of I was like robbing people and I was doing like shit like I shouldn't have made it out of, or I should be like locked up for a long time. And, but, through all that, she stuck by me and, she had told me that I have to lose contact with you. Like I can't stay in touch with you anymore. We're moving to Arizona. If you want to stay up here, she's like, I have to just stop connecting with you. And that's like just broke me, like I was like, my mom's my best friend, but I was so blinded and I had the blinders on, and my vision was not clear, that I wasn't thinking right. And, I'm a huge believer in God, and through everything that I'd went through, I'd never lost faith. Like, even when I was like doing hard drugs, like I never lost faith that I was gonna someday be somebody. Like I knew that what I was doing at that point in time wasn't good, and it wasn't, I wasn't being a member of society, contributing and all that, but I was numbing pain. Just the way that in when I was when I was going through high school, and I feel like it was all just numbing something that was missing, or filling that void that was missing. And later on in life, I feel like I recognized what that was. But yeah, it was just, it was a long road. And, now, looking back, it's like, it's crazy. And just like, I want to make sure that I mention this, just like Jamil says, like, I'm not perfect. Like, I still battle with demons, I still, there's still things that I'm working consistently every day to like, make sure that, that I don't end up right back there. Right. But like, I mean, I'm really far away from that extreme, but like, it could happen to anybody, and just, I keep that in the forefront of my mind. So I think that's what makes me just go so hard and go to the extreme, because when I was using, I went to the extreme. Right. So like, I knew that if I went the other way, I have to go to the extreme. So now like, just I feel like, yeah, success is like my addiction now. Is like, I just want to be somebody that I can say that I'm proud of. And I feel like I'm proud of how far I've came, but I don't know if there'll ever be a day that I feel like I'm where I thought that I would be, because my mind is always playing tricks on me that I should be farther.
Can I tell you something from somebody who's had like all their dreams come true?
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. You're gonna all the things. You're gonna have all the trappings, all the stuff. You're gonna be like, oh, I got this, I got that, I got that. I had so many of these little ornaments I was putting on my tree.
Yeah.
And none of it works.
Doesn't fill the void.
Oh no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And
Healing does.
Pardon me?
Healing does.
That's it. And that's
healing
when,
does. That's all to it.
That's when you get there.
Right. Usually, that's exactly what. So there's one thing
but
that
we don't
I
want
really
to
wanted to
slow
say.
down. We don't want to slow down to figure that out, right?
Well,
No,
I mean,
you
that's
gotta
part
just-
of it.
Give it
is the
4
slowing
years.
down gives you permission to face it.
I bet.
Right? So
I
you're
bet
still
4 years
running.
from now, Zach, you're gonna be a completely different person. There's something
You're
that
still
happens
young.
between like 34 and 38.
Yeah. I know that there's definitely something that happens between like 30 and 34 too, but yeah, I feel like just getting
one of the things you talked about, and you also talked about that I wanted to point out, being being someone who's loved many, many addicts and trying to do what's best for them and, be there for them. One of the best things I learned in that process is that this thing Spirit calls trampolining, that a lot of time when we love addicts, we want to be their trampoline. And we want to keep them from hitting rock bottom, right? We're like, I'll give you the money, I'll do this thing, I'll give you love, I'll help you out, I'll set up your new apartment, I'll help you get the down payment. And like I was there my whole life, right? From my parents and then my siblings and then my friends and then my partners. And I was constantly falling into that pattern. And Spirit finally said, "You're making it worse." And I was like, "How?" And they said, because you are stopping them from hitting rock bottom, which means they're always trampolining above rock bottom, which is far, far, far more dangerous than letting them hit rock bottom once.
Yes.
Once you hit rock bottom, there's nowhere else to go. They will decide, and it only happens internally, that they're ready for change. And I realized that one of the major things is we can't want more for people than they want for themselves. It becomes a form of judgment. Right? So here I am saying, like, my life is working for me. I'm comfortable here, but I'm not comfortable with your suffering. I'm not comfortable with your addiction. I'm not comfortable with how you see life. Instead of saying, like, that was your choice. You're choosing those things because that's where you're at right now, mentally, emotionally. That's your lesson. That's your experience. And eventually you'll figure it out. And when you figure it out, I'll be here for you. But I was enabling in my own weird way. And now I've been able to use that experience with a lot of other people who have, they're parenting addicts or they love addicts or they're in relationship with addicts. And it's been a really eye-opening experience where we don't realize how much more danger we're causing by enabling, by playing that role of, and I would say it's not like you stop loving them, but what I've called it now is loving people at a distance. I love you at a distance. I love you enough to not let you hurt me, because I know that that's just going to be another thing on your conscience, another thing you feel like you have to fix, another thing you feel like you failed. So I love you enough to keep my space. And another thing that they're always reminding me is that, addiction is choosing one thing over everything, and healing is choosing everything over one thing. But that they have to make that transfer, right? They have to choose that. It comes from the inside out. And in so many times, like we're saying earlier, we're so uncomfortable with people suffering, our loved ones hurting, our loved ones having deep feelings, our loved ones being uncomfortable, that we want to force healing. We want to force them to shift, but you can't force evolution. You can't force self-awareness. And, when I teach healing now, I always say that it's really fascinating that when we do healing, what we're doing is correcting misprograms, right? We're correcting trauma. We're correcting misinformation in the brain. We're correcting stories we told ourselves when we were younger that don't make sense anymore. And the way Spirit explains that to me is that trauma is a belief system where somebody taught you that you were unlovable somehow. And healing is realizing that that was never actually true. Right? That was a projection of some other wound or story or whatever it was, and unraveling that for ourselves. And the brain chooses logic over emotion, but that trauma is usually a misprogrammed emotion, right? Like your parents, getting explosive and saying something they don't mean out of their emotion instead of out of love. So we correct it, we heal it, we reprogram it. And it allows us to continue transforming and growing and facing our stuff. But the really interesting thing is that the brain can be lied to, right? So in one of my favorite quotes, and Sebastian Inga says it on social media, and it's that, if a calculator says 2 + 2 is 6, is the calculator wrong? It's not wrong, right? It's not wrong, because a calculator is just a computer. It was programmed that way. So when your brain tells you that something is real, it's not necessarily wrong. It was misprogrammed. And healing is going back and correcting those programs and allowing ourselves to see the world differently and function differently and show up differently. And that's a really important part of the only way to shatter those programs. The only way to learn what we don't know or see what we don't know is what I call like self-shattering. It's that it actually happens through judgment, right? So a lot of us in our stories talk about judgment, whether it's judgment from people around us, judgment from our families, judgment from someone or something. But essentially, it's the shattering of that reality or that program where we realize we're not getting the results we want or the results we thought we were going to get or the reality we thought we were going to get. We're noticing that patterns are repeating and we don't feel good about those things. So we have to become the objective observer. We have to realize that I need to shatter a belief system or a thought process or get in or be introspective. And that's where accountability happens. That's where accountability is born, right? It's like, I'm fucking up my life. I need to correct this. And I always say accountability is powerful because when you become accountable to something, you own it, which gives you the power to correct it. And that's the beginning of all things.
I like the idea of the objective observer. It's a lot of the work that I do, and I call it the witness. And for me, what happened is I stayed on the same set of drugs that I was given when I was 15 until I was 30. But then at that point, the medication spellbinding that I was talking about earlier, I had no concept that the drugs were in part why I was such a mess, right? And so I thought that if I get off of them, I'm going to be fucked, right? Like I'm going to be completely fucked without these drugs if I'm this bad on them. But I had this opportunity to travel around the world for a year, and I physically couldn't take the drugs with me. And so I saw a psychiatrist, and she pulled me off the drugs, and I ended up in severe antidepressant withdrawal for a year that was way worse than the depression had ever been. And in every way, it was more painful physically, psychically, emotionally, mentally, in every single way. And so for me, coming out of that, one of the things that has been the most helpful for me is kind of akin to the meditation. It's been this idea of trying to get into a witness state, which is where I feel like I watch myself having an experience while it's happening. And so for me, the definition of healing isn't so much that I never feel bad ever again, because that's certainly not true. Like I'm incredibly sensitive, which was part of the problem, right? You react to things really strongly. But it's this idea of, okay, I'm going to feel pain. I'm going to feel discomfort. I'm going to feel frustration in my life. How do I separate the experience from the reaction? And how do I kind of just come into this state of I am a soul having an experience in a body as opposed to I am the experience, right? And so for me, it's just this witness state. And sometimes it gets a little weird because it's like you kind of get out of your body and you kind of get into in psychiatry and psychology, they'll call it derealization or depersonalization, where you feel like everything's a little bit of a dream. But that's also kind of like what it is. We're all creating our own realities around us all the time and choosing how we interpret it. And so for me, putting that space in between is such a huge piece of power. And the more I've done that, the more I've stopped doing things. I put myself on a learning embargo last year where I said, I'm just not allowed to learn anything. Like, I'm gonna just see what happens, because we're all kind of shamed if we don't learn and grow and growth mindset and all these things. And I was just like, what if I stop? What if I just stop trying to learn? So I said, no books, no news.
And the world didn't fall apart?
Not only did the world not fall apart.
Wow.
But
you looked inward probably.
Well, I ironically ended up learning a ton.
More. Yeah, you listened to the experience. That's
it was
the experience.
Just paying attention, right? Like I said, okay, you can't listen to podcasts, you can't read books, you can't watch the news, you can't go read a paper. Like,
well, that's information
you have to just
overload.
pay attention to
a lot
the
of people
world.
don't understand what a distraction that is, because we do live in technology information overload, that we're spending so much time out there observing everybody else that we have zero time to self-reflect or know who the fuck we are.
Or you're actually not watching other people and what's going on in the world because you're so concerned about, like, you're really concerned about how you are going to get ahead or what you're doing. And so you think you're doing the humane thing by trying to learn and, be aware. But in reality, you're pulling away from that inner thing that's really calling you. And what happened to me is, after a long period of time of insisting I didn't learn, I picked up a paintbrush and I started painting. And painting has become this huge influence in my life over the past 18 months in a way that is completely blowing my mind. And it's because there was this knowledge and this thing inside of me that I could not shut the fuck up long enough to hear that it was trying to get out. And so, Zach, what I'm so curious about you is if you can kind of start playing with this, what's going to happen? What's going to come out of that wild brain of yours and that wild soul, and what could be created, and how your life could be different,
right,
for the better and for the curious in a couple months, or a couple years even.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
It's fun.
You went through that.
Yeah. painting is a beautiful way to express deep emotion. Like you said, you're very sensitive.
Words
so
are
if you
limiting.
don't have the outlet, I actually went to college. It was really interesting. I went to college for psychology because I wanted to be an art psychologist. I wanted to help children with their trauma through art and help them heal, which is hilarious because I never finished my full degree. And I ended up doing this. And I laugh about it because I met a therapist one day, a psychologist who was about 80 something years old. And I was like, I always wanted to be a therapist. And she was like, well, I always wanted to be a psychic. I was like, why didn't you do it? And she was like, I suck at being a psychic. I was like, well, that's hilarious. But I realized, like, I always thought it was so shameful I didn't finish school for that because I was a single mom of 2 kids and running my own business and bought my first house, and I just couldn't do the classes anymore. It was too much for me. And I realized that spirit was pulling me in a whole other direction. And, you know, I make more money and I'm much happier and I'm not regulated by the system or the process or, you know, forced to do things to families for a license. You know, I can really follow myself, my intuition, my guidance, and still have those skill sets and kind of be freely exploring them, you know, based on my own authenticity.
That's great. All right. I think to close, because we're probably starting to get up on our timeline here, what I would love is I would love 2 things. One, what might you have done differently if you know what you know now to your, at least for the 3 of us, to our 14-year-old selves? And what would you tell parents who are considering medicating their kids?
I think for me, I don't think I do anything differently. I get asked that question a lot, like, what would you go back and tell your past self, you know, with everything you know right now? And I'm actually really happy with where I am. And I know that every hard thing and every misstep and every stub toe and every, you know, pill led me to this place where I'm actually feeling like I'm on the path to healing myself. And so I don't regret any of it. I don't have I don't want to go back and change any of it. I don't have any anger towards anybody, even the doctors or the guidance counselors or my parents for that matter. Like, all of them were just doing their best. And I see that and I know it. And even though their best wasn't the best for me, it was what it was at the time. And I'm grateful to have the opportunity. I think right now, for anyone listening to this right now and they're struggling with a decision on, you know, how to deal with something that might be going on in their homes with their children, there's alternatives. There's so many things that we can do, and there's so many ways to heal ourselves. The Eastern world of medicine is just so diverse, and it's got a full tapestry of different ways to really look at the root causes of what's happening to us. And so be open-minded. Look at the alternatives out there. Don't think, you know, that just because you're trying a natural remedy that you're going to stop wearing deodorant. Like, that's not those 2 things they don't mean the same thing. You don't become this kind of person because you've decided to do something in the natural in the natural world. But at the end of the day, you know, one of the biggest influences for me in how I've healed myself has been Joe Dispenza. And
he's come up like 3 times in the past 24 hours for me. It's fascinating.
He's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I go quarterly to retreats of his.
Oh, cool.
And I believe that if you can really change your field, meaning your energetic field, that's where all the healing happens, because our projection, or like what we're showing the world, is really just the manifestation of what's happening in our field. And so if you can change your field, you change your world. And so in knowing that, how can we change our fields? It's how we change what we believe, right? And what we believe is a product of our identity. And so we can all be somebody new, right? I used to think I was a way. I used to identify as, you know, a street thug and a hardcore disc guy, and listen to a lot of Tupac. And I still love Tupac, but I don't got to do any of that shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. You come to my house and you want to mess around, I'll call the police. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. So
we're not fighting. Yeah. I'm calling 911.
Yeah. So it's what it is, right? You can be anything you want. You can identify your mind is with all the things. But I just hope for anybody listening to this, love you the most, because when you can love you, then people can learn how to love themselves. Yeah.
Love that. That's awesome. I think a big visual that I'm getting from you that you've kind of realized is just like your understanding of things probably has gotten a lot better. Because it feels like you're very content with everything that's going on now, you know?
I mean, yeah,
which is really
a lot of the stuff. That's some of it sucks, but I'm still cool, you know?
Yeah, that's really cool to see. I mean, you just don't find that a lot of times, you know, a lot of people are just stressed out or, you know, different things going on. But, yeah, I just wanted to mention that. I would say that one thing, you know, kind of that I've realized that would make a big difference is just the stories that we tell ourselves, right? Like, we sell ourselves so much bullshit all the time that a lot of those things would just not happen if we didn't tell, or if we didn't sell ourselves, you know, that story. That's one thing. And then just slowing down, because I feel like a lot of the times, you know, in my life, especially even still to this day, like, I have to like really, really remind myself and try really hard. And then even still, sometimes I don't do it, even after, you know, telling myself like, hey, like, just slow down for a second, take a break, stop working, shut your phone off. Like, even right now, like, my mind is just like, what am I missing? You know, like, I'm missing money, or I'm missing, like, I'm, you know, like, and I can't just shut my brain off for 2 hours and just do a podcast, you know, like, just sit here and talk and do a podcast. Like, who cares what's going on?
Sounds like bro needs meditation. Do you meditate?
Yeah, no, I don't.
And we need to turn your notifications off on your phone.
That's exactly how you learn that. Yeah. So I would say a lot of people struggle with meditation, and they think like, I can't sit still and do nothing. But the idea is that it is a moment of self-reflection and self-control, introspection, right? So train yourself to do that, and it'll help you kind of silence the mind and stay more focused on what you're, you know, the present moment.
Yeah, no, I
turn your phone off when you start to do it.
Yeah,
or like the notifications.
Right. I'm just gonna put it in a different room. Yeah,
and it's itchy at first. Like, it feels like your skin's crawling, and you're like, "What am I missing?
When you first started,
you definitely becomes habitual, and you realize nothing fell apart. Right? Like, nothing fell apart. You didn't miss anything. You found yourself in the process, and you feel better. You feel more charged. You feel more grounded, and you're ready to start the day better.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
And then when other people's bullshit steps into your life, you deal with it a lot better too.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just think, you know, just slowing down and just, you know, realizing that there's a lot of work that we can do and things that we can prevent. And, you know, there's parts of us, and I know that there's still parts of me that I haven't, you know, achieved or haven't dove into and learned yet, you know, like, because, you know, my biggest fear, I guess you could say, in life is just getting to the end of it and you know, going up to heaven, and then God sits you down and he's like, hey, he shows you like a replay of what he had planned, and then he shows you a replay of what you did in your life, and they're completely different. That's my fear, you know.
You can take comfort that you're going to get another chance.
What's that?
Can I share something that Spirit taught me that I thought was really fascinating? So I deal with this thing called Akashic Records. And in Akashic Records, we look at our life plan. And in this life planning process, we create a million what ifs. We go down every single what if, every road, right? And we solve for all these amazing problems. We still have free will. So we get dropped into this body, and we still have this lovely thing called mistakes. And I got really frustrated one day because I always feel like sometimes I'm mourning a reality or a future that other people never knew could exist because I can see it, right? So I got really frustrated one day and I was like, fucking mistakes. Like, why do we even have free will? Like, everybody just keeps messing it all up. And spirit, of course, like I argue with them all the time. So this beautiful thing that it just shifted the way I looked at life. And it was that, could you imagine that we have all of the most intelligent souls in a room planning your life and creating every single what if and thinking it through, and still yet you are creative enough to come up with a new issue or a new way of thinking or a new road? They said there is no such thing as mistakes. We see it as a challenge and we see it as growth. Yeah, so when we're looking at our lives, we're not really sitting there with this judgment of like, how dare you? You know, we're looking at it like, you were brave enough, you were courageous enough, you were strong enough, you had this tremendous hero's journey, and you still taught us, right? You still taught us because you still did things we couldn't plan for. You still did things kind of like with your own magical free will that we didn't even account for. And that's the beauty of the human experience, is that we expand and grow and keep learning through these things we call mistakes. And we keep discovering new parts of ourselves.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I just, and I say that in a way because it's like tomorrow, like if I wanted to tomorrow, I could go and sit on the couch and do nothing for a year, right? Like I can make my own destiny. Like, but at the same time, like I say that because like it just keeps me motivated knowing that there might be something out there if I don't like take risks and roll the dice and do things that scare me and face my fears and, you know, and stop doing things that numb pain and block things out and be more head on with things that I really might, you know, run into, you know, who I really am as a person. And then I'll, you know, in doing that, I'll be able to achieve what, you know.
If you want to know who you really are, you just got to say it.
Yeah.
And it will knock. Yeah.
Who we
Whether you
are
like
is
it or
our
not.
experiences.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing thoughts, Jessenia?
Not really. I just wanted to again take a moment to really share how happy I am for all of you guys. I feel like so many times, you know, I hear the really sad part of the story. I hear the opposite side of the story. I hear the permanent damage, you know, that we've gotten to a place of no repair, that we feel so helpless and so hopeless. And I just feel so happy that, you know, we're sitting in a room of people who've overcome tremendous obstacles and accomplished amazing things and are still so open-hearted enough that we want to leave a powerful impact and help other people. And that just is such a beautiful thing.
How about you?
Yeah, for my closing, I wish things were done differently. Like, I'm not going to say I have regrets because I kind of ascribe to the same view of like there's many timelines and this is the one we took. But I feel like because I was a minor and I was a kid and there was just like basically some middle-aged white guy made a lot of decisions for me that I had absolutely no agency in, that still kind of pisses me off. And I think I've spent a lot of my life since coming off all the psych drugs, all the drugs, because all the physical stuff magically went away too once I stopped taking the drugs that caused the problem. I pretty much spent the past 8 years just in this almost frantic, obsessive place of experiencing just the human experiences, because I still sit in this sense of kind of awe and wonder that we're able to feel so much and experience so much and have so many new things come in and out and ebb and flow. And I want more of that and as much of it as I can, because for 15 years I didn't get that. And so I wish I had those 15 years. I kind of wish I knew.
Do you feel like you appreciate it more because you were so void of it for so long?
I mean, I do appreciate it more, and it's like it's obviously given me a lot of learning, and I work with so many people who are coming off of psych drugs now and kind of going through psychiatric drug withdrawal is not the hardest part. The hardest part is coming out on the other side and realizing your whole life was built for a different person and how you kind of come back from that. So there's plenty of things that I've learned and gained from it. And also, I think I always wonder who would I have been if that hadn't happened? And not that it would have been better or worse. It's so clear to me that there's a timeline that didn't happen, and there's things in my life that I may never have or experience because there was a weird stunted thing that happened around that time, or because it affected part of my physiology in a certain way. And so it's just kind of a reconciliation of that. And I just I hope that parents really, really think hard. Maybe get a second opinion. Maybe get a third opinion.
Or maybe even just start them very, very, very small. Like if you're going to at all.
Yeah.
Like, and then
that's
do,
a whole other conversation about what's considered actually low therapeutic doses.
Yeah.
But.
And then do like emotional checks. Because I think
I think it's about the parent. Check in with the parent. Fix the parent.
Yeah. A lot. Well, and it might be the school system. There might be an episode 2.
Societally speaking, we're not really a system that is created for emotional thriving and support and evolution. But we, as individuals, have a very strong responsibility to create a new system that helps us and helps our children grow and thrive. Like, we can't just be victims to a system. We can't just be like society when we are the people that create the society, right? Again, accountability. We have to create the future we want. And a lot of us find our healing becoming the adult we wish we had. Yeah. So I feel like you have become a really beautiful advocate for children because that is the adult you wish you had, right? And that has really inspired you to keep going.
I like that. Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. Everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for hosting us.
Of course.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Very fun.